I got $7 in my pocket. I literally have $7 in my pocket, and I got nothing else.
$7. That's it. No plan, no backup, no phone calls coming in. Just a 23-year-old kid sitting in his dad's pickup truck in the middle of the night, watching everything he had worked for disappear in the rearview mirror. And here's what makes this story so hard to understand. This wasn't just a bad day. This was the end of everything he had built his entire life toward. The scholarship, the dream, the promise he had made to himself that one day he would never be poor again. All of it gone. But what happened next in that tiny apartment with nothing to do and nowhere to go is the part nobody talks about. And it's the part that changed everything. What would you do if you hit rock bottom at 23? Stay tuned. But this isn't just a story about someone who was broke. Those stories are everywhere. This one is different because most people who hit that kind of bottom stay there, or they go back to the only thing they know. He did neither. He made a choice in that tiny apartment that nobody saw coming. Not his father, not his coaches, not the people who had already written him off. And here's what nobody talks about when they tell his story. The $7 weren't the problem. The silence was. 2 weeks of sitting alone, phone not ringing, friends becoming millionaires while he cleaned scuff marks off his parents' walls. That silence is where most people break. And that silence is exactly where he found what he was made of. But before we get there, you need to understand where this all started, because the $7 moment didn't come out of nowhere. It was the final chapter of a story that began long before that pickup truck. Before anyone knew his name, he was just a kid who kept losing the ground beneath his feet. Born in California in 1972, by the time he was a teenager, he had lived in New Zealand, Honolulu, Pennsylvania, a new school almost every year, a new city, new faces that didn't know him yet. His father was barely home. And when he was 14, his parents divorced. He and his mother were alone, trying to make rent in a tiny apartment in Honolulu on almost nothing. One day they came home and found an eviction notice on the door. The car was already gone, repossessed the week before. A 14-year-old boy standing outside a locked apartment with his mother. Nowhere to sleep, nowhere to go. That kind of moment does something to a person. It did something to him. He got angry, started stealing, started fighting, got arrested multiple times before he was 17, expelled from 4 schools. A kid heading in exactly one direction, and it wasn't up. Until a football coach in Pennsylvania looked at him one day and said 4 words nobody had ever said to him before: "I believe in you." And everything changed. He channeled every ounce of anger and pain into one thing: football. And he was extraordinary. Full scholarship, one of the greatest college programs in the country, for the first time in his life. The promise was real. He was going to make it. He was going to buy his parents a house. He was going to end the poverty once and for all. And for a while, it did. He arrived at university with one goal: the NFL, not because it was a dream, because it was a promise. A promise he had made to himself in that evicted apartment, in that repossessed car, on all those nights when there wasn't enough money for the basics. He was going to make it. He was going to buy his parents a house. He was going to end the poverty once and for all. And then, someone better arrived. A teammate, bigger, faster, stronger, who looked at him one day and said, "I'll take your position." And he did. 4 years of university. And he played in the starting lineup exactly once. His GPA dropped to 0.7. He almost got expelled. The NFL scouts stopped calling. But he held on because somewhere inside him, the promise was still there. So when a Canadian Football League team offered him a contract, he took it, $250 Canadian dollars a week. He lived with 2 teammates, ate instant noodles, slept on a dirty mattress, and waited for his chance. It never came. One morning, the coach called him into his office, shook his hand, thanked him for his work ethic, and told him he wasn't cutting it. "It's just business." He handed back his playbook, gave the coach a handshake, thanked him for the opportunity, and walked out. He was so broke he couldn't afford a cab to the airport, had to call a mentor to drive him. And on the way, it started to hit him. 4 years of college, years of sacrifice, every promise he had ever made to himself and his family, all of it leading to this moment. Being driven to an airport with no money and no idea what came next. He called his dad. "Can you come get me?" His father drove down from Tampa in the middle of the night, a little red pickup truck, and the drive back was the longest of his life. 23 years old, sitting in his father's truck, moving back in with his parents, the same parents he had promised he would take care of, the same poverty he had promised he would escape. And somewhere on that highway, he reached into his wallet just to see a $5 bill, a $1 bill, some change. Ain't this a bitch? I got $7 in my pocket. I literally have $7 in my pocket, and I got nothing else. And the next 2 weeks were the darkest of his life. He didn't leave the apartment. His phone didn't ring. The friends he'd played with at university were now millionaires in the NFL. And he was sitting alone watching the O.J. Simpson trial on TV, cleaning scuff marks off his parents' walls with a bottle of 409. Not because anyone asked him to, but because it was the only thing he could control. I was completely depressed every single day. And in that silence, in that apartment, with $7 and nothing else, he faced the question that breaks most people. What would you do with $7 and nothing else? He sat with that question for 2 weeks. And then something shifted. A thought, quiet at first. The world was going to hear from me. I didn't know how. I didn't know when. But I knew. And he picked up the phone. And the kid in that tiny apartment, with $7 in his pocket, who had been evicted, who had been arrested, who had been cut, who had been depressed and alone and invisible, wasn't just anyone. That man was Dwayne Johnson. He hung up the phone with his old coach, and for the first time in months, he felt something other than emptiness. Direction. He called his father. "Dad, I want to be a wrestler." His father, the man who had wrestled for $100 a night his entire career, didn't laugh, didn't hesitate. He said yes, and became his son's trainer. What followed wasn't a fairy tale. It was dark gyms and small crowds and years of building something from nothing. Again. But this time was different. Because the man training in those gyms wasn't the angry teenager who had stolen to survive, or the devastated 23-year-old cleaning scuff marks off apartment walls. He was someone who had hit the absolute bottom, opened his wallet, found $7, and decided that was enough to start over. That energy was unstoppable. The crowds grew, the arenas filled, the name got louder. 17 world championships, and then Hollywood, film after film, franchise after franchise. The kid who couldn't afford a cab to the airport became the highest paid actor in the world. And when he built his production company, he didn't name it after his championship, or his comeback, or any of the things the world celebrated him for. He named it $7 Productions, after the worst moment of his life, because he understood something most people don't. Your lowest moment isn't something to hide, it's something to build on. And through all of it, he never forgot the people who were there when he had nothing. His father, the man who drove through the night in a little red pickup truck to bring his son home. The man who had wrestled for $100 a night his entire career and never complained, who had taught him to wake up before sunrise, to work when nobody was watching, to keep going when the world said stop. He bought his father a house, not because he had to, because he had promised, and he kept every promise he had ever made from that apartment. But there was something else he carried with him, something heavier than the $7, the memory of his mother standing at a locked door with nowhere to go, the memory of a 14-year-old boy who watched his family lose everything and felt completely powerless. He never wanted anyone to feel that way again, so he built something, not just a career, not just a company, a foundation for at-risk kids, for terminally ill children, for the teenagers who reminded him of himself, angry, lost, and one conversation away from going in the wrong direction, because someone had once looked at him and said, "I believe in you." And he understood better than most what those 4 words can do to a person. There's a version of this story where he stays in that apartment, where the depression wins, where the silence wins, where the $7 become the final chapter. That version almost happened. 2 weeks of it. Phone not ringing, friends becoming millionaires, nothing to do but clean scuff marks off the walls. But somewhere in that silence, he made a decision, not a plan. Not a strategy, just a decision. The world was going to hear from me, and that was enough. So if you're sitting in your own $7 moment right now, if the phone isn't ringing, if the dream just got cut, if the people you believed in have stopped believing in you, remember this. The most powerful thing you can do right now is not have a plan. It's make a decision that this moment, this apartment, these $7 are not the end of your story. They're just the part before the world finds out who you really are. Sometimes the place that breaks you open is exactly where the real story begins. That's the story of Dwayne Johnson. This is Before They Knew. See you next time.